Welcome back to One Winning Pod, where the Ravens are looking to win their first game in a new sequence of hopefully a winning streak against a team that hasn't won for 3 games straight. We're talking about the Denver Broncos. Let's ride. They are not that good. Their defense is a pretty good team, a pretty good unit. They lost a piece during the trade deadline. And then their offense is completely anchored by that guy Russell Wilson, or at least the ghost of Russell Wilson that is playing for them at this current moment. So we'll break it down. They're currently last place in the AFC West. They lost to the Panthers team that we beat by 13 points. Favored by 8.5. The over-under is on 38.5, boys and girls. They don't think many points are going to be scored, and I can't blame them based on how these offenses have looked. The Ravens are somewhat underperforming. The Denver Broncos are tragically underperforming. So what do you guys have here? What are you guys thinking? What's your opening thoughts?
Dude, well, you undersold how bad this team is. So you said they're coming in here with a 3-game loss streak. You realize that this team has not won in the US of A since Jimmy Garoppolo stepped out of the end zone. Over their past 8 games, they are 1-7, with their one win being because Trevor Lawrence threw a pick at the end of that game in London. That is it. That's the only reason that this team has a win over the past 8 games. They've just been bad. And, you know, I can take half credit for calling this because I remember whenever the news broke that the Broncos got Russell Wilson, I know everyone was saying, oh, man, the Broncos, look out. They're going to be a force in the AFC. I'm just like, I don't see them finishing higher than 3rd in their division. I think that you got the Chiefs. They're still at 1st, and then someone, either Chargers or Raiders, will take 2nd. But I didn't think they were going to be this bad. I just thought that the Broncos, ever since they've lost Peyton Manning, they've always underperformed. They've had good rosters, and they just don't put it together. But this is a new level for the Broncos. This is among worst teams in the league. Russell Wilson has less touchdown passes than he has bathrooms in his house this year. Shout out to Caleb from our Dynasty League for sharing that meme in our chat. There's apparently some guy on Twitter or TikTok, I'm not sure which, who's literally keeping tabs on when Russell Wilson is going to have more touchdown passes this season than bathrooms in his house. And it's December. It's about to be December, and bathrooms is still winning. It's incredible. But yeah, I mean, unfortunately, though, you do have to take into consideration this defense. As bad as their offense has been, their defense has actually been really good this year. And while they haven't won many games this year, they did take the Raiders to overtime. They could have won that game. They had a close loss to the Chargers. That game, I'm pretty sure the Chargers won on a last-second field goal. They were again in a close game with the Raiders in Week 4. I think that game wasn't as close as that final score was, though. I think that was some garbage time points they scored. And, of course, there was that overtime loss to the Colts where no one wanted to win that game and nearly canceled Thursday Night Football for the rest of eternity because of how unwatchable that was. Or so I was told. Luckily, I slept through it. But, yeah, I do think, though, what scares me about this game is the defense that the Broncos have, and as we've been discussing, some relative inefficiencies that the Ravens offense has had given the injuries. So I do think when we look at this matchup, that's the most important thing to look at. How does this Ravens offense match up against this defense, and can the Ravens get out to a fast start in the first half so that the Broncos don't even have any hope of sticking around in this game? Because, again, that's the only way they win this game, is they're not going to get out to a big lead. They haven't done it all year. Why would they do it now? But if the Ravens do let them hang around like they've done with the Panthers and the Jaguars these past 2 weeks, even the Broncos could beat them. So I think if we're looking at the matchup, it's the first thing you got to look at.
Also, another fun Russell Wilson stat. Carson Wentz has more touchdowns. And he's been benched since week 6, 7? What week are we on now?
It's been a while.
12, 13? Yeah, historically bad. I mean, one thing I was going to add, just as far as the Broncos team, they have had quite a bit of injuries, especially on the offensive side of the ball. Obviously, is a promising second-year player, Javonte Williams, running back. He's been on IR since early in the season. Judy has been out of the lineup. Their starting left tackle, Garrett Bowles, is also on IR. Tim Patrick as well. We're at wide receiver. Their receiver depth going into the season looked pretty dang good, but yeah, with a lot of injuries, particularly on the offense, it certainly hasn't helped. But yeah, I mean, Wilson himself, I think, is playing at an unbelievably low level for his career. So obviously, that kind of puts a wrench in the whole thing. But yeah, certainly, yeah, I think you're right, Peter. It's just a underachieving roster. But that said, yeah, I think it's a great point of, their defense is good enough, unfortunately. Almost similar kind of with the Panthers and almost the Jags, right? The Panthers and the Jags both have played us pretty hard, particularly on the defense, and provide our offense some struggles. So the Broncos have a very similar defense, if not better. And certainly, yeah, a lot of what we talked about last episode with the offense, they've really got to try to take some steps forward to be able to capitalize and score some touchdowns on this defense, because if not, it's going to be another nail biter.
So yeah, looking at it right now, Sutton's the only guy we can say with confidence who looks like he's going to play this game. And his last 3 games, he's not looking horrible. He hasn't found the end zone, obviously. And he also just hasn't been kind of like fully himself. So 3 weeks ago against Tennessee, he had 11 targets, 6 catches, 66 yards. The week after that, 7 targets, 5 catches for 80 yards. That was a pretty good performance. And then last week against Carolina, 8 targets for 6 catches and 75 yards. So definitely a guy to consider, a guy that I think Marley could help shut down. But then you got the issue of if Jeudy does come back, that guy, while he's been very disappointing all year long and kind of honestly his whole career, has some injury woes, obviously, too. Missed almost all of last year. It turns out that he still has talent. And I think if both of them are out there, I'm concerned, because then you have that whole all right, there's 2 good options and we don't have any trustable corners. Maybe I think the good news is if Hamilton is able to play, and it looks like maybe he will be able to play this game, then we have 2 outside corners again and not having to have Marlowe in the slot, and I think that helps. Marlowe in the slot, Stevens doesn't have to be playing as much. I think that's a big win. So we'll have to keep an eye on the injury report and see how that plays out. But if Hamilton can't go, or he tweaks it, or something happens, I could be concerned if Judy's playing. After that, though, it's a bunch of no names, a bunch of guys you haven't heard of before, probably. Hinton, I've heard of, I think, but the other guys, I was like, yeah, these are names. Hamler got hurt, so he's not going to be out there. And yeah, I think they've lost a lot of offensive weaponry. And then you also go ahead and say, okay, they lost Javonte Williams. Well, surely they have Melvin Gordon. How bad could it be? They split carries last year, to much of Javonte Williams Booster's chagrin. Well, he's out of town. They cut him. And who's carrying the ball? Our one and only Laxatives Murray. He's the one carrying the ball. And had 80% of the snaps last game. Mike Boone, he lasted not very long before he was on IR. Apparently he can come back now, but hasn't been seen yet. Their running game is completely different than what it came into the season as.
Yeah, it's crazy. And it's not like their running game was that effective this year either, when Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon were healthy at the beginning of the year. As one of those people who is high on Javonte Williams and had him in several spots this year, you were left lacking from a fantasy point perspective and real life perspective as well for the Broncos. Gordon, it's really the same to see what happened to him. He bet on himself with that holdout a few years ago. Didn't work in his favor, and his career's just really been downhill ever since. And unfortunately for him, that fumble, that was it. Although it does look like that he signed to the Chiefs practice squad today. So maybe he'll have some revenge there. I don't know if the Broncos and Chiefs still get to play each other this year for any more games. But yeah, and so they're going with Murray at the running back position, and he's the Murray that we remember from last year, really not doing anything in particular very well. He did average 7.1 yards per carry last week against Carolina, but you will notice that 52 of that came on 1 carry. So aside from that, basically averaging around 3.8, what he was with us last year. So again, another aspect of the game that we think that the Ravens should be able to dominate. Something we failed to mention last episode when discussing what went well for the Ravens in the game, 1.9. That's the average yards per carry the Ravens held the Jaguars runners to. And that includes when Travis Etienne was in the game. He only had 2 carries for 3 yards. This rush defense, while it had some issues at the beginning of the year, has really, really clamped down. So I see no reason to believe that the Ravens shouldn't be able to bottle up Murray and any other random running back that the Broncos throw out there and force the Broncos, like they forced the Jags, to beat them through the air. And, Trevor Lawrence still has some ways to go until he fully capitalizes on his draft potential. But as we said at the beginning, Russell Wilson, despite having a very good NFL career, is, I would say, a worse quarterback than Trevor Lawrence right now in today's NFL. So on paper, defensively, especially if Hamilton's able to play, this looks like a plus matchup for the Ravens. If Hamilton is out, then yes, it gets a little dicier, but I still think that they would be fine there, and we'd see more of the defense. It would look more like the defense against the Panthers as far as the pass is concerned than the Ravens' defense against the Jaguars.
I think another aspect to the game is you look at their offensive line. They came into the season graded about middle of the road, and they've suffered injuries all across it. So I can't imagine they're particularly great right now. And I think our defensive pass rush should be good enough to get home. Russell Wilson is not as elusive as he once was. I could see us being able to sack and feast there and disrupt. So even if our corner situation, our secondary overall is a little shakier than we would hope going into this game, I suspect our front seven could have a big game and figure out a way to slow down this offense on that side of the ball. I also think if you keep the players in front of you, they don't have the dynamic playmakers to make you super worried. Sutton's a big guy, big wide receiver, can go get contested balls, but I don't think he's necessarily going to burn you or get crazy yak. And they just don't have a lot of those players at this point. So I would say that's another angle to look at it positively for the Ravens. Greg Dulcich, keep an eye on him. That's their ascending tight end. He's more of a wide receiver than anything else. That was my analysis of him coming out of, I believe, UCLA. He used to be a wide receiver, has that body type of, I can kind of block. I'm bigger than most wide receivers, but I'm not a road grader by any means. And then, of course, though, if you want to talk about the blocking tight end, that's Eric Tomlinson. They have Tomlinson from us, and we see him out there a couple times. I saw him almost catch a touchdown once when I was watching one of those terrible Thursday night games. So I think I'd be more concerned about that tight end situation if our linebacking core hasn't been as solid as it's been.
Yeah, you definitely bring up a good point. At least on paper, I think this is a good offense for the defense to kind of capitalize on, and just in terms of the matchup. At the beginning of the year, if you would ask me, hey, how would the defense perform? I'd be a lot more scared, just because of the wide receiver depth that we were talking about. But with a lot of these injuries, it seems like something that the Ravens could benefit from as a great bounce back game.
I also don't have too much more to say about this offense. I mean, we barely talked about it, but Russell Wilson, one more time, he's not playing well. He got chewed out by Mike Purcell last game. No one knows exactly what was said, but there seems to be absolute chaos in that locker room. I hope Tucker's comments on the plane that one night don't come and bite us, but you gotta feel like this defense is gonna feast against their offense, and I think it can be a get right game for both sides of the ball.
It certainly does. I am personally not too worried about anyone on the Broncos taking too much of exception with Tucker. Like you said, there was the screaming match on the sideline last game, and we don't know these players, but anyone who's followed the NFL over the past few years, Richard Sherman in particular and other members of the Seattle Seahawks defense were always very outspoken that there was just something off in the relationship between Russ and the rest of the team. And we're not in the locker rooms, we don't know, but certainly some of the things that he's been doing on social media this year and basically, just what's happened on the team. It does make you question the validity of that and maybe pay attention to it a little more. But yeah, for whatever reason, just Russell Wilson, it's just hasn't worked with him in the Broncos this year, and they've got him under contract for a while going forward. I believe I saw until 2028. So they're going to have to figure out after this season what they're doing there, because I don't see how they can bring him back for another year. They're going to have to trade him or do something, because pretty soon they're going to be starting Brett Ripon, I would imagine, because they got to figure out quarterback post Wilson already, not even one full season into this contract. Yeah, let's move on to the defense next, because this, like I said, this unit is actually playing well this year. And if they were paired with even an average offense, like, say, the San Francisco 49ers, or better, I take that back. San Francisco has actually been pretty good this year. I don't know, the Giants offense. I think you're looking at a team that is in the playoff contention. And again, for the third year in a I shouldn't say third year. For the third week in a row, the Ravens are going against a young corner who's been on the scene lately, and that would be Pat Surtain II. He was a first-round pick, 9th overall for Denver last year, and while he hasn't gotten any interceptions this year, he's been making headlines with shutting down big receivers. He had a big game against Devontae Adams back in the first matchup, and while I'll admit I haven't, focus too much on what he's been doing this year. Every time you hear this guy's name, people are raving that he's a real cornerback in this league. He's a guy that you have to take into consideration wide receiver matchups. So again, third week in a row, like I said, the Ravens are going to have to deal with a young corner. So that's going to be something they're definitely going to have to look at when they're making their game plan for this game.
Broncos also have a pair of really good safeties. They've got Justin Simmons on the back end as well as Kareem Jackson. Both those guys have been some good players in their career as well. Kind of reminds me a little bit of, kind of similarities to the Jacksonville as well. They've got some good dynamic safeties. We're very active. We didn't talk about them in the recap episode a little bit, but they were very active on the back end against us. A lot of them were involved in many tackles. They were really kind of swarming when the ball was kind of let loose. I could see them being, taking advantage of any, shots that, maybe Lamar wants to take, and just being very active in the run game as well.
Yeah, it's the third week in a row. I feel like we talk about how this team that we're playing has a corner that can completely shut down one person in the game, right? So at least like the Ravens are used to that story. Surtain, obviously one of the top talents, has no picks this year, but I think it's because he's just not getting challenged. People know that he's the real deal. And they also have a lot of like solid tacklers on defense. I would say the number one thing to note about their defense, if you look at their stats, they don't have that many turnovers on the year. In fact, they're just a -1 turnover differential, so they don't even have more turnovers than the offense. Now, we know that the offense has been playing poorly, but they just aren't. There's not honestly that many turnovers on their side of the ball either. If you look at it compared to the rest of the league, they don't have like terribly many sacks getting generated. Chubb was the biggest sack generator, but now he's in Miami, so I think they overall play well. You got guys like Alex Singleton getting a bunch of tackles, Josie Jewell, and those guys are kind of wrapping up players and getting them down and not letting them get big gains. So I think they have solid linebacker play.
Yeah, they definitely do, which makes it interesting when you look at what the weakness of this team is, which really is the run game. In 3 of the past 4 weeks, they've had runners rush for over 100 yards against them. Deontay Foreman had 113 last week. 2 weeks before that, 109 from Josh Jacobs, and then 156 from ETN in London. Now, they were able to slow down Derrick Henry. He only had 53 yards on 19 carries against them. But while this defense, they're actually ranked third in the league in pass defense, behind only the 49ers and the Titans, I believe. They're middle of the pack against the run, and I hopefully will be getting Gus Edwards back. I don't see any reason why we wouldn't. He didn't seem to get hurt in the game. He made it through with a clean bill of health, as far as we know. Maybe we'll see some more from Kenyon Drake. We didn't see much of him last game, and a couple carries from Justice Hill, especially considering the issues the Ravens are having in the passing game, and with the inability for the Broncos offense to really generate big plays. It seems like a control the clock type of environment is what the Ravens are going to want to go for, and just mash the ball down their throat. And hopefully that's something that can give the Ravens the clock advantage. And if you're efficient in the red zone, hey, that can be a good recipe for victory. So I do expect for the Ravens to try and establish the run at some point in this game. Maybe they're going to start, as they've done the past couple of games, try and attack the Broncos through the air. That seems to be the plan of attack that the Ravens have been doing the past couple of games. But at some point, I think they're going to put the ball on the ground and have some pretty good success with that.
Give me some more Duvernay jet sweeps, man. We saw a couple of those against the Jags after we had talked about kind of his snap count going down. Not snap count, but touches, I guess, going down some of the previous weeks. Get him more involved. I wouldn't expect him to be lined up against Sertan, most of the game anyway. Maybe in some packages, but I don't think he's going to have a ton of damage there in terms of like the passing game. Get him more involved in the run game. It'd be a great way to kind of open things up a little bit. I thought we had relative success on a couple of high leverage plays against the Jags. Would love to see some more of that.
Hopefully Likely's able to make an appearance in this game. Tweaked his ankle late in practice on Friday, I think it was. Got added to the injury report and wasn't able to play. Hopefully it's able to heal up and he's able to come out there. And then if not, I don't know. I thought it would be Kohler's season last week when Likely was inactive, but it just turned out that they went with 3 tight ends instead of their normal 4. Maybe he'll make an appearance soon. J.K. Dobbins is going to start practicing, which is great. I don't expect him, obviously, in this game, but maybe soon. Marcus Williams started practicing. Maybe he'll be back soon. So, and then, of course, I think the other big piece when we talk about the defense is Stanley going to be back? I think he was just a huge missing piece last game as well. Not that McCary played poorly, but Stanley just brings you a next level of options, not just from a pass pro, but his ability to move in the run game. So I want to see Stanley get back on the field when he's ready and start performing at that all-pro level.
I really don't know if there's anything else to say.
Yeah, this is one of those classic games where you look at it and you're just like, gosh, I really hope the Ravens can win this. They don't have enough talent to overwhelm them. And it's going to be a game where the Ravens can either win big because they decide to come out and play well, or they might let a Denver team stick around for far too long because they aren't able to put together a solid series of plays. Or, the best or the worst option would be like they just hand them the game, because I don't see a unit on the defensive or offensive side of the ball for the Denver Broncos that's going to overwhelm the unit on the opposite side of the field for the Ravens. They just don't think they have the talent. Some of it's injury related, some of it's underperforming related, and I think the biggest eyes are going to be on the offense and how they bounce back from this game, and if they're able to execute in the red zone, get snaps off quickly, and just give a different taste in the mouth. It's so surprising to be a Ravens organization that scores 27 points and you're just like, offense didn't look that great. So we got to see that cleaned up.
Yeah. One other thing to look at for this game, I will say, like I said, I do worry a little bit about this defensive matchup with the Ravens offense. But again, like we said, the Panthers offense was quarterbacked by Sam Darnold last week. They scored 23 points. And another thing to consider with the Broncos, they only have 3 wins. They have to be eliminated from the postseason, virtually. I guess even if they won the table, I can't think that that's what anyone in that locker room is thinking about right now. And you look at what their travel schedule has been as of late. Week 8, they traveled to London, obviously. Then they had the bye week after that. They had to travel to Nashville, had the home game against Vegas. Then they had to travel to Carolina. If I'm them, I'm just sick of that. like mentally, you got to think about what that does to a team. Like, what that's got to be, some stressful talks with trying to work things out with the family and the wives and kids at school, and just, if you're not in that life, you're just like, man, we're just on the road so much. I think that's mentally tough for a team that's that down right now, and you're going to be going against a Ravens team who desperately wants to wipe that bad taste out of their mouth out in Jacksonville. The fan in me, seeing the Ravens offense struggle the past 2 weeks, is cautious about this game. But you look at it from that perspective, the Ravens might actually have a good shot at a multi-score, blowout win here. So I don't know. We'll see what happens. But I look at that, and I wouldn't feel too good about that if I was a Denver fan, one of the 12 Denver fans who are still clinging on to hope here, some club of sixth graders. But just an interesting aspect of the matchup there when you look at the travel schedule that the Broncos have had over the past 5 weeks.
Yeah, that's a great point, Peter. I think this team is emotionally and mentally checked out in a way, and they've been having a really rough stretch, not just in the performance on the field, but with the travel. So we're going to add on to that with them coming out to the bank. I think it's going to be a great game to be at if you have the opportunity to come by. A lot of Ravens creators are going to be in the area. I want to give a shout out to, I think Pickett Brewing is going to have a pregame with Kevin Oestreicher and the Baltimore Beatdown guys, Cole Jackson. They're all going to be there. So that'd be a really cool place to kind of meet some of the Ravens community and see them before the game if you're going to be around for it. But before we end the show, we got to talk about our bold predictions and score predictions. Does anybody have one that they just can't wait to get out, want to talk about?
Not can't wait to get out. Though, I think I'll just go right into score predictions here. Again, like I said, I am concerned about the matchup here between the Ravens offense and this defense here, but like I just said, the mental aspect of this is something that's very real. And if you're the Broncos, I don't see how you motivate yourself for this game. I think the Ravens, by that fact alone, will have an easy win. I'll say 23-6. And my bold prediction will be Charlie Kolar is activated and he gets a touchdown. Let's go with that.
Cool. Yeah, I'll go next. I think if Hamilton comes back healthy, I think this will be a very long day for the Broncos. That being said, I do think it's going to be a home game. I think the Ravens are, going to be playing a lot harder, knowing of, having that such a hard loss last week. But if Hamilton does come back, I expect this defense to be really good. So my score prediction, I'm going to call for 20-0. It's going to be a shutout at the bank. And my bold prediction is that Gus Edwards will end up with both of the Ravens' touchdowns.
It's not a bold prediction in 2022 to predict a shutout for a Russell Wilson-led offense.
It is for the Ravens, though. They haven't had one. They haven't had one in a couple of years, I think.
Well, no, you didn't say that was your bold prediction. You just said it was your score prediction.
Oh yeah.
That was my point.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's true.
Look at my bold and score predictions, and I just hate to bring it up to people, but my bold prediction was that the Ravens were going to limit the defense was going to limit them to 230 yards. Well, just Lawrence threw for 320, so big miss there. And then my score prediction was 24-0. Oh. God, I screwed up so bad, guys. I'm really sorry. I'm crying a little bit. Just looking at how I led you astray. I'm going to try and make it up to you this week. Bold prediction. I feel like I've said this before. Yes. Week 6 against the Giants. 2 sacks for Owe. There we go. I do think Owe has been close. I think that he's due, and I'm looking at this offensive line. I think it's possible. 2 sacks for Owe. Score prediction. Peter has 6 points. Chris has 0 points. Am I about to just Price is Right? I'm going to go in the middle with 3 points? I think, yeah. I can see it. I can see the path of just 3 points scored. Maybe they get a short field. They get some penalty help. So 3 points. Are the Ravens offense going to figure out a way to score more than 3 points? Absolutely, they will. How many? I'm going to say 27. I think they're going to match the output of last game, and it'll be a little disappointing. But hopefully it is a just longer game. Like there's burning clock, 14 play drives. So Ravens 27-3. The under, but they do cover. That's what we're looking at here. Well, I guess it wraps up this episode against the Broncos. Hopefully the Ravens give us a lot to talk about positively next week. I really wanted to talk about the Jaguars game with, like, what if we had one scenario? But I honestly think we would have talked about a lot of the same things. There was a lot of weak spots in that game. Similar kind of Carolina. The Carolina recap was a little like, we won, but all throughout. And I think it might have been similar there. Hopefully this is, we won, and here's why we're excited about it. And maybe they even show us some things that give us glimmers of hope as we go into 2 divisional matchups after this. Away as well at Steelers and at Browns. So really need to get a win at home against the Broncos to get us on the right trajectory for that away sprint in division. You can find us online at Twitter, One Winning Pod, on YouTube, One Winning Pod, with History Corner that Peter might be alluding to right now.
I'll admit I'm still in the works of figuring out what History Corner is going to be this week, but if you subscribe to the YouTube channel, you'll get a notification when that video comes online, and yeah. So look forward to something this week.
Maybe there'll be a Mile Miracle. No one knows for sure. And then, yeah, you can also email us, onewinningpod@gmail.com. Go Ravens. Let's get a W. Let's get back in the win column. We'll see you next week.